All right, Rabbi, good morning. Let's begin. We have a beautiful daf ahead of us today. Today is daf Chaf 20. We are picking up, Baruch Hashem, from my time at the Rabbi. It's on Yutes Amud Beis, 1, 2, 3, 6, 8 lines up from the bottom. Our shir this morning is dedicated by Seth and Rachel Rotenberg in commemoration of the yard site of Seth's father, Zev ben Chaim Shmuel, Zichron Lebrach, Vayopnen, and the merit of our Talmud Torah's Neshama will have an aliyah and the family in Nechama. So we also have a sponsorship by Natan and Leah Berry in honor of the yard site of Leah's grandfather, Avram Chaim ben Gedalia Zichron Lebracha. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah Neshama will have an aliyah and the family in Nechama. And to Ayala, thank you to Ayala and Sarah Steinberg, dedicating the Shiurim this month in commemoration of the yard site of Ayala's mother, Ilya Dafna Bas Yosef. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshama will have an aliyah and the family in Nechama. All right, so let's begin. So remember, we left off yesterday with a riveting machlokes between Rabbi and Rabbi Elazar Berib Shimon, specifically about Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. If the Kohen goes out and sanctifies his hands and feet, essentially, what's the shelf life of that sanctification? How long does it go on before it has to be renewed? So Rabbi says that halacha lemaisa kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. He says kiddush yadayim v'raglayim essentially only lasts through that day and the following night. But comes the following morning, the Kohen would need to go ahead and re-sanctify his hands and feet. Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon says no. Once a Kohen sanctifies his hands and he does kiddush yadayim v'raglayim, that kiddush, that sanctification remains in effect until when? We'll have to see until when, but at least until there's Hesach Hadas, until the Kohen removes his intention, which we're assuming presumably means until the Kohen leaves the Beis HaMikdash. So for argument's sake, if the Kohen is running on a Kohanic adrenaline and he's doing Avodah for 5 days straight, without any lapse in concentration, so Rabbi Elazar Shimon says that halacha lamaisa, one kiddush yadayim v'raglayim suffices, and he need not sanctify his hands and feet every new day. Says the Gemara, my time with the Rabbi. So what's Rabbi's logic? The siv begishtam, because the pasuk says begishtam when the Kohen comes close to do the avodah. Rashi says over here dechsiv begishtam. It's 6 lines up from the bottom. The gisha the shachar is gishachrisi shariyish kama aracha chadasha. So Rabbi understands that the word gisha begishtam, the pasuk is o begishtam al hamizbeach b'sharis la'akteri shel Hashem. That gisha represents again a new day's avodah. So therefore, again, according to Rabbi, each and every day the Kohen has to re-sanctify his hands and feet. My time is Rabbi Elazar Shimon. What's Rabbi Elazar Shimon's logic? The Siv bivoam. They say, when does the Kohen have to do it? When he comes to the Beis HaMikdash. Rashi says bivoam v'harizeh lo yatsa. In other words, you have to go ahead and do it ultimately again when halacha l'maisa you come to the Beis HaMikdash, and once you come, ultimately again the sanctification works, and it's in effect until you leave. So says the Gemara, v'idach hanamiksib bivoam. So we'll say, what does Rabbi do with the word bivoam? Ikasav b'gishtam lo kasav bivoam. So inachinami, if the Torah would have just said b'gishtam and not bivoam, hava amina al kol gisha v'gisha. I would have thought that every single time the Kohen comes into the Beis HaMikdash, he requires kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. Therefore, kasav rachmana bivoam. Therefore, the pasuk says bivoam v'idach nami haksiv b'gishtam. What does Rabbi Elazar and Shimon do with the word b'gishtam? Ikasav bivoam v'lo kasav b'gishtam. So if the Torah would have just said bivoam and not b'gishtam, sahava amina afilu abia rekonis. So ultimately, I would have thought that a Kohen has to do kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. Even what? We'll say abia rekonis literally means if he comes into the Beis HaMikdash without doing avodah. Let's say he just walks in, he's not doing avodah. So I might have thought that we'd have to do kiddush yadayim v'raglayim as there as well. Haksiv. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Arikanis, how can you say that the Kohen would be chayiv to do kiddush yadayim v'raglayim if he's just coming in without the intention to do the avodah? Haksiv l'sharis. The pasuk explicitly says, when is there a din ultimately a kiddush yadayim v'raglayim? L'sharis ultimately only when there is a service in the Beis HaMikdash, to which the Gemara says, Ela begishtam miboile l'chidr of Achar bar Yaakov. Rather, I will say the word begishtam is required for the following drasha. Domer of Achar bar Yaakov, hakol modim mikiddush sheni shu lavush. So the Gemara says, so what happens? So the Gemara says, So ultimately, again, everyone agrees that on Yom Kippur, Rabbi saying that by the time he comes, B'Kiddush Sheni, when he comes to do the second sanctification, that's done ultimately once he's wearing the big day kahuna. The Gemara says, Damakra o b'gishtam, mishe'ena mechusar ela gisham bilvad. Because the pasuk says, or when he comes, when he approaches, someone who is only mechusar, someone who is only lacking the approach. Yatsa zesh mechusar levisha ugisha. So we'll say they use the word b'gishtam to teach me a din by the avodah of Yom Kippur. So the Gemara says, lahaktir isha lamali. So what about the phrase lahaktir isha? What does that come to teach me? Top of chaf. Mahu detema. What would I have thought? Hani mili avodah de ma'akva kapara. So we'll say, listen to this. So when it says lahaktir isha, what does that come to teach me? That says as follows. I would have thought that the obligation for kiddush yadayim v'raglayim only is if the kohen only comes about if the kohen is going to be doing an avodah that is ma'akiv kapar. In other words, part of avodah that if you don't do it will compromise the atonement aspect of the karban. Aval avodah delo ma'akva kapara, but for an avodah which is not ma'akiv kapara, doesn't in any way hold back kapara. So the Gemara says, "Lo, I might have thought that there is no obligation for kiddush yadayim v'raglayim." Therefore, the Gemara says, "Kamash Shmuel, know that any time the kohen enters into the Beis Hamikdash to perform some type of avodah, there is a din of kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. There is a din ultimately of sanctification of his hands and feet." Kielser Rav Dimi Amar Rav Yochanan. So Rav Dimi came out he said in the name of Rav Yochanan. By Ilfa. Ilfa asked the following shayla. L'divrei ha'omer ein lina mo'eles bekidush yadayim v'raglayim. Supposed to listen to this. Literally translated, according to the opinion who says that lina, staying overnight, does not go ahead and negatively impact the sanctification of the hands and the feet. Also, which is another way of saying the shita of Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon, namely that once you wash your hands and feet, that sanctification is good as long as what? As long as what? You don't have a lapse of awareness, right? As long as you're quote-unquote concentration, that you have no hesech hadas. So however long that is, one sanctification could go a very long way. So according to that opinion of us, who holds that one sanctification could span a significant amount of time as long as there's no lapse of awareness, make kiur mahu sheyifsu. Also, listen to this very interesting question. What about the make kiur? What about the water of the kiur? So remember again, I'm so like yesterday already. The kiur is the large wash basin, right, which the Kohanim used for Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. So we'll say, if you leave water in that kiur overnight, does that water become pasul belina? We'll say lina means that for certain sacrificial or consecrated items, sitting overnight disqualifies it. So if water sits in the kiur overnight, is that water disqualified or not? Rashi says, Maushe, so we'll say third line down from the top in Rashi, Belina imlo shaka babar b'nei agola. We'll discuss that in just a moment, actually. So mi amrinan hani lemai. So we'll say on one hand we could say, well, what is this water used for? Lekiddush yadayim v'raglayim. It's ultimately used for the sanctification of hands and feet. Well, kiddush yadayim v'raglayim gufayhu lo pasul b'hulina. So on one hand I could say, well, the sanctification of hands and feet doesn't become disqualified over the night. In other words, I will say, this is according to Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon, that if the sanctification ultimately again is not invalidated by the passage of night, then what? Then the Gemara says, so therefore again, if the sanctification of hands and feet does not become possible overnight, then what? Then the water used to accomplish that does not become possible. Oh, dilma even the kiddush lahu b'kli shares mifsali. Or maybe we say no. Once that water comes into the kior is effectively a kli shares, a service vessel, and once it sits there overnight, it becomes disqualified. So we'll say an interesting halacha. Then we'll say you understand, by the way, the importance of this particular question, because the shaila is, do you have to do something with the leftover water of the kior that night, or can you just leave it alone? So Kiyasir Rav and Amr Rabbi Yirmiyah will say first wide line Chaf Amid Aleph, Amr Rabbi Yirmiyah, Amr Rabbi Ami, Amr Rabbi Yochanan, Hadir Pashit Ilfa. Ilfa then answered his own question. Ki machlokes bezu, kach machlokes bezu. So we'll say Ilfa said the same machlokes which applies to Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim, namely, does Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim also have a shelf life? Does it have a maximum effectiveness range? Right? That same machlokes by Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim applies to the water of the kior as well. Amr Lefana Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Bisna. So Rabbi Ata Omer Kain. So Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Bisna said, Rabbi, do you really say this? Elahachi Amar Abasi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishmei Diilfa Kiyar Shelo Shakel Mi Ba'erev Mekadesh Mimenu Avodas Laila Ulumachar Eino Mekadesh. So we'll translate this and then we'll explain it. The kiyar, I will say, that was not immersed. We'll discuss what this means in just a moment. The kiyar which was not immersed so the following evening, Mekadesh Mimenu Avodas Laila. You could still go ahead and use its water to sanctify hands and feet for any avoda done that night. Ulamachar eino mekadesh. But for the next day, you cannot use the water. So the Gemara says, "V'havinan ba." We asked about this. We're going to explain what this means in just a moment. Lamachar eino mekadesh delot tzarich lekiddush. What does it mean when we say that the next morning you can't sanctify hands and feet? Is that because the next morning sanctification is not required? O dilma if sulu balina. Or is it because the waters themselves ultimately became pasulina, v'la pashat lon, and ultimately again, it was not answered. Umar ka pashat le mifshat, and ultimately again, you're now answering it. Bosai, watch this. Tashma ben katin asa shnei masar dad lekir. So we'll say Ben Katin went ahead and made 12 spigots or 12 faucets for the kiyur, for the wash basin. What else did he do? Afu asa muchni lekiyur shelo yumeimav nifsalan belina. I will say it's actually quite interesting. What else did he do? He employed, I will say, essentially like a pulley mechanism. Now, what was this? So the kiyur, the way it worked was, I will say that the kiyur was attached to a mechanism, which was you were able to hoist it up and lower it down into a spring of water. So why did he do that? Shelo yumeimav nifsalan belina. We'll say because instead of going through the work of going ahead and filling up the kiyur, draining the kiyur for leftover waters and then refilling it, so Ben Katan went ahead and made this mechanism where essentially the kiyur can be lifted up and immersed into a spring of water. Now we'll say, now what that did was, the waters could therefore sit inside the kiyur all night, and there's no issue of lina. There's no issue of leaving the water there overnight because they are connected with a normative water source. My love. So we'll say, so what are we concerned about over here? My love, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. So does this not reflect the view of Shimon Lazar, who holds that what? That lemaisa again, ein lina, mo elas bekidush adayim v'raglayim. That ultimately again, that there is no problem with the water remaining overnight. To which the Gemara says, "Lo Rebbe." So ultimately, no. Rather, it reflects the view of Rebbe. To which the Gemara says, "V'hamid dereish Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon, seifa nami Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon." But if that's the case, if the first part of the brayso is Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon, then ultimately again, the seifa should be as well. To which the Gemara says, "Diktani reisha balo itzal paro." Because let's remember again, what's the beginning of that brayso? The beginning of that brayso is when the Kohen Gadol comes before his par. Right? The Kohen Gadol comes before his. Also, just by the way, one important just detail on this. If you look at Rashi, Shnei Masar Dad, Rashi says 12 faucets. Why 12? Shemotzin Meimov, Ve'aminim Beseder Yumashu, Shnei Masar Kohanim Ha'oskim B'tamid, Mikachim V'asachos. So it's actually very interesting. The maximum number of Kohanim that you would need for the Tamid service would be 12. So Ben Katan made 12 spigots, 12 faucets, so that this way, again, anyone who needed Kiddush Raglayim could all accomplish it together. This was an efficiency issue. So we'll say, so the Gemara wants to suggest now, we'll look at the Reisha of that Brisa. Balo Eitzel Paro. So we'll say, listen to this. The Kohen Gadol went ahead and comes to his cow on Yom Kippur. Upar hayo omid beina ulam lamizbeach. Listen to this. Now the cow was standing in between the ulam, which is the antechamber, which was, remember again, the Beis Hamikdash structure itself was like a T. You had the long and narrow area called the ulam, and you had a rectangular box behind it called the mikdash. So the part of the Kohen Gadol was standing between the ulam and the mizbeach. The truth is, you could see, by the way, I think in Rashi, you have this picture over here, right? I'm sorry? Or there's a picture on WhatsApp also, but only look at the picture on your WhatsApp, nothing else. Right? So again, or you could just look in your Gemara. I know, like it's such a novel idea, right? Most of the Gemaras have a picture of. Yeah, everybody has a picture of. Yeah. So you could see it over here. It's a very simple picture. So you have the mizbeach, you have the altar. Now remember again, the one part that's missing in that picture is the ramp leading up to the Mizbeach, but that's fine, it's not important for our purposes now. You have the Ulam, which is like the top of the T of the Beis HaMikdash, and the Beis HaMikdash behind it. So the cow of the Kohen Gadol, the par, was placed in between the Ulam and the Mizbeach. Rosh Lodanam upon of Lamarav, so we'll say its head was towards the south and it was facing towards the west. Uva Kohen Omid b'Mizrach, Kohen was standing in the east. Upan of Lamarav, facing west. So Mansham say Darabena Ulam Mizbeach Tzafon. Who is the opinion who holds that between the Mizbeach and the Ulam is still considered to be Tzafon, is still considered to be northern? Rabbi Elazar Shimon. We'll say this is the opinion of Rabbi Elazar Shimon. Why? Disanya Ezehut Tzafon. So we'll say the Gemara discusses again what is considered north. Now we'll say the Gemara is asking over here again. We're not going to delve too deeply into it now. But what the Gemara is asking over here is, like if you look in Ezu Makoman, so you'll notice again certain blood applications and certain carbonos had to be done in different directions. So the shaila becomes how far do certain directions extend within the courtyard area by the Mizbeach. So the Gemara says, Ezut Tzafon, what's the definition of Tzafon? Mikir Mizbeach Tzafon, Kosa Zara Tzafoni, from the northern side of the Mizbeach until, Ezut Tzafon, Mikir Mizbeach Tzafoni, Vad Kosal Azara Tzafoni, from the northern side of the Mizbeach until the northern wall of the Azara. Ukineget Kol Mizbeach Kulot Tzafon. And opposite the entire area of the Mizbeach is called Tzafon. Divrei Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon Moshe. Rabbi Shimon adds on and he says, Af bein ha'ulam v'la Mizbeach. Even between the ulam and the Mizbeach is still considered to be Tzafon. So you both say, most times when we're talking about directional areas, we're usually referring to areas in front of the Mizbeach, not behind the Mizbeach. When I say behind the Mizbeach, I mean the area between the Mizbeach and the ulam. Yet, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon says that even between the Ulam and the Mizbeach is considered to be quote-unquote the northern area. Rabbi Mosif af drisas ragle hakohanim umakom drisas ragle yisa. Rabbi adds on, even the area where the Kohanim would traverse, or where the Israelim would traverse, aval mina chalifos v'lifnim hakomodim shepasel. I will say everyone agrees the chalifos is the base chalifos, the knife chamber. Where was the knife chamber? See, even if you look at your image in Rashi, you'll notice that when you enter into the ulam, if you walk up the steps into the ulam, to the right and to the left, in other words, the two edges of the T, was called the Beis HaChalifos. So the Gemara says, everyone agrees that from that area already, again, that is no longer called Safon, and therefore, again, off limits for sacrificial purposes. V'tizbara, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon he, v'lo Rabbi. So ultimately, again, and we see this is Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon and not Rabbi. So the Gemara says, Hashta Rabbi, ad Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Mosif. So if Rabbi is adding on, ultimately, again, to the sheet Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, ad Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon la Mosif. Certainly he's adding on to this position of Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon as well. Anon hachi kamrinam. This is what you mean to say. If you want to say that this reflects the position of Rabbi, Lokma b'makom drisas ragle kana makom drisas ragle Yisrael. Then you could go ahead and set it up as discussing the area where the Kohanim would traverse, or the Israelim would traverse. Ella my Rebbe Elazar Rabbi Shimoni. Lokma mi Ella my Rebbe Elazar Rabbi Shimoni. Rather, you have to say that what reflects the Rebbe Elazar Rabbi Shimon. If that's the case, Lokma mikir mizbeach tzefoni ad kosel azar tzefoni. If that's the case, then set it up as discussing from the Kir Mizbeach Tzefoni, the northern wall of the Mizbeach, until the northern wall of the Azara. Ela mai islach halameimar mishum chosha de Kohen Gadol, hachanam mishum chosha de Kohen Gadol. So I'll say it's actually very interesting. So therefore, what do you have to say? How do you explain the Shita of Elazar Shimon? Mishum chosha de Kohen Gadol. If you take a look at Rashi, it's probably about 12 lines up from the bottom. Mishum chosha de Kohen Gadol, shekol avodas pnim shel mekipurim alav, v'tash kocho, lahachi mema'atin safon ledivrei hakol. So we'll say this is actually quite interesting. So apparently, even though we would normally say that for directional issues, we don't like to extend beyond the edge of the Mizbeach. In other words, we don't like to do things in the area between the Mizbeach and the Ulam and what we'll call the temple structure, the temple structure proper. But for Yom Kippur is an exception to this. Why? Mishum chosha the Kohen Gadol. We'll say, see, the Kohen Gadol is moving around a lot. Remember again, Yom Kippur for the Kohen Gadol was an incredibly it must have been an incredibly strenuous, I don't want to say the word grueling, but it's a pretty grueling day. In other words, he's working the entire day. And remember, the avodah of Yom Kippur could only be done through the Kohen Gadol. So part of what Rabbi Shimon says is what we do is, in order just to minimize the exertion a little bit, we try to centralize everything as close as possible. So instead of making the Kohen walk to the other side of the Mizbeach, ultimately to do the avodah of the par, we just bring the par in between the Mizbeach and the Ulam. What it just does is it minimizes the exertion to some small degree, making the life of the Kohen just a little bit easier. So both say, but bottom line, halacha l'maisa, how do we paskin? Well, actually, let's finish a little bit, because remember, all of this, just so you understand, what's the bigger question that we have yet to resolve is Rabbi Elazar Shimon, which is a fundamental shaila. When the Kohen does Kiddush Lev Raglayim, washes his hands and feet. So what's our shaila? What's the shelf life of that? How long does that Kiddush Lev Raglayim work for? So ultimately, again, remember, Rabbi says, at most, if you come in the morning and wash your hands and feet, it only works, longest it works for us until when? The next morning. That's the longest. Even if you haven't left the base hamikdash, you're doing the avodah the entire time, comes the next morning, you have to re-sanctify. Rabbi Elazar Shimon says, no. When you sanctify your hands and feet, that sanctification works for how long? For as long as you have no hesach hadas. So again, we still have not resolved that machlokes. So hold on, we're going to get there. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kiddush Yadav Raglav l'Trumas Hadeshen l'Machar Inu Tzarech l'Kadish Shekvar Kiddush Mitchilas V'Aler. Now this is very interesting. Let's say the Kohen shows up for work in the morning. Now, we'll say the first order of business in the Beis Hamikdash was the Trumas Hadeshen, the removal of the ash from the Mizbeach. Remember again, there are no karbanos at night. So what does happen at night? The burning of the leftover fats and limbs, which meant that when you came into the Beis Hamikdash the next morning, there was a pile of ash on the Mizbeach. So the first order of business is clearing off the ash from the Mizbeach. So let's say Kohen, so we'll say, when is that done? That is done already again before sunrise. That's done before daybreak. So Kohen walks into the Beis Hamikdash, does Kiddush Lev Raglayim, and essentially he's doing it when it's still nighttime. So we'll say, now what's the shaila? The shaila is, when the sun rises, does he have to re-sanctify or not? To which Rabbi Yochanan says no. Once he did Kiddush Lev Raglayim in the morning for Trumas Hadeshen, he need not re-sanctify. Why? Shekvar Kiddush mitchilas avoda. Because we say that Trumas Hadeshen is the beginning of the day's avodah, and even though it is occurring before daybreak, that's considered to be the beginning. You don't have to re-sanctify. So Laman, whose opinion does this reflect? Rabbi ha'amar paslalina. So I'll say, if it's Rabbi, listen, according to Rabbi, it shouldn't be true. According to Rabbi Rabosai, when the sun comes up, then what should be the halacha? You should have to re-sanctify. Because Rabbi says that, again, sanctification only works until the beginning of the next day. If you're coming to work early, before daybreak, then you sanctify your hands and your feet. That's fine for that period of time. But once the sun comes up, you should have to re-sanctify. And if it is Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon, then what Rabbi say? He holds sanctification could extend for however long you want, as long as it's no hesach hadas. To which the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi says the Olam Rabbi. Really, this reflects the opinion of Rabbi. Velina d'Rabbanani. Both say the concept of lina. The concept, meaning what the Gemara now is saying is something very important, which is that me'ikar adin, according to the letter of the law, if you're a Kohen and you do Kiddush Lev Raglayim, sanctify your hands and feet, that sanctification works for however long, as long as you don't have hesach hadas, as long as you don't have a lapse of awareness. There's a din d'Rabbanan that says no. We would like you to re-sanctify every single morning. There's a din d'Rabbanan. But, so the Gemara says, umodi dimikros hagever v'at safra lo paslalina. And ultimately, again, but even Rabbi agrees that what? That if you're coming to work for the day, you're coming to the Beis Hamikdash to do the avodah for the day, we'll say, and what? But you're coming before daybreak, even Rabbi will agree that the Kiddush Adayim Raglayim that's done, even though it might technically be done when it's quote unquote night, because that is the beginning of the day's avodah, that sanctification works for that entire day. So I will say this is the novelty over here. Even though Rabbi said normally night causes an end to your Kiddush Adayim Raglayim, but if you're coming to start the day's avodah when it's still technically night, in other words, before daybreak, that Kiddush Adayim Raglayim works. To which the Gemara says, Rava Amar, the Olam Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon he. So the Gemara says, V'ra'a Rabbi Yossi Dvarav, Rabbi Yochanan B'Dvarav, B'Tchilas Avoda, V'lo B'Sof Avoda. Or the other possibility is that no, it does reflect the view of Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, but Rabbi Yochanan holds of him by the beginning of Avoda, but not by the Sof Avoda, by the end of Avoda. Okay, so may say, Rabbi say, now either way, the good news is everyone seems to be agreeing that what? That if you're showing up for work that morning, but you're showing up while it's still technically what? Nighttime, and you do Kiddush Adayim V'Raglayim then, you need not re-sanctify when the sun comes up, because that is considered to be the beginning of that day's avodah. So we'll say, watch this. What happens if, so Rashi quotes that this is a Mishnah from Tamid. So let's say again, the Kohen is coming down from the Mizbeach with the shovel full of ash for the Trumas Hadeshen. The other Kohanim see him coming down. And what happens? The other Kohanim see the Kohen coming down from the Mizbeach with the ash. They run, and they sanctify their hands and their feet from the Kiyur. Okay, so what's happening over here? So says the Gemara. One second. Fine. Says the Gemara. Bishlam ala Abaye dimokim lo kirebi umod Rebbe dimikros ageravat safala paslalina. So hamani Rebbe. So we'll say. So this makes sense that the other Kohanim are running to go ahead and do their kiddush v'raglayim now, even though what? It's before daybreak. Because again, since at the end of the day, even though it's before daybreak, but it's the beginning of the day's avodah, then it doesn't pose a problem. Ela l'rava demokim lo Rebbe Elazar Reb Shimon. Right? So the Gemara says, I'm sorry, Ela l'rava demokim lo Rebbe Elazar Reb Shimon. Aval the Rebbe mikros hagever at safra pasla lina hamani. So we'll say, but according to Rabbi, who sets this up, according to that, it's like Rebbe Elazar Reb Shimon. But according to Rebbe, ultimately, again, a kiddush v'raglayim done before daybreak will be pasul. Hamani, whose opinion does this reflect? So Rebbe pasla lina. If it's Rebbe say, then if they're doing kiddush v'raglayim, even though again they're doing it for the beginning of the day's avodah, but they're ultimately doing it before daybreak, it should be pasul, meaning it should be pasul once the sun rises. And if it's Rabbi Elazar of Shimon, then ultimately he says that what? That halacha lemaisa, any kiddush yadayim raglayim is good. Rabbi say as long as you don't have hesach hadas. To which the Gemara says the olam Rabbi Elazar of Shimon. Really, it's like Rabbi Elazar of Shimon. Rabbi say what's the case over here? V'achamay askinon bekohani chadati. Rabbi say what are we talking about over here? We're talking about kohani chadati. Rashi says shaloshim shu balayla v'lo hayu rechutz yadayim raglayim. And ultimately, again, so we're talking about both like Kohanim who are just coming on shift. So because they're just coming on shift, they never did Kiddush Adayim Raglayim to begin with. And what the Bryce or the Mishnah is describing over here is what? That they're sanctifying their hands and their feet for the first time. So say, if you take a look for just a moment, go back for just a second to the last Rashi and Chaf Amud Aleph. So Rashi says, Miro v'kitshu, lohotzi es hadeshen shebamakom ha'arach, o l'sakun l'tapuach, shebe'emtza mizbeach, v'achi tznan behu, hasa mechalu ma'alin ba'afar, be'efer be'al gabi ha'tapuach, v'kasaka daitcha bekohanim sha'avdu kol ha'layla kai, u'mikdosh she'yadayim v'raglayim hayu, u'tzrichen lachzor l'kadesh achsha. So we'll say, what Gemara essentially says is, you misunderstood the case. We thought that what's happening over here in this Mishnah is that the Kohanim see the other Kohen coming down from the Mizbeach with the shovel full of ash. They run to sanctify their hands and their feet in order to participate in Trumas Hadeshen. We thought that the case was they were already working in the Beis Hamikdash that night, but yet to do Trumas Hadeshen, they're re-sanctifying. We were trying to figure out why is there a need for re-sanctification. I don't understand. Whose opinion does that reflect? To which Rabbi said the Gemara ultimately answers no. The case in the Mishnah Torah says what? When we say the Kohanim are running to sanctify their hands and their feet, why are they running to sanctify their hands and their feet? Because again, they're just coming on shift now. They had not been working in the Beis Hamikdash that night before. They're reporting for duty now, and therefore halacha l'maisa they have to go ahead and sanctify their hands and feet now for the first time that day. So both say. So bottom line, who do we paskin like in this fascinating discussion, or this fascinating machlokes, ultimately again between Rebbe and Rebbe Elazar ben Reb Shimon about halacha l'maisa again. About halacha l'maisa kiddush na'im raglan. I'm supposed to listen to this. So the Rambam in Hilchos Bias Hamikdash, this is Parak Hey, halacha Gimel, writes as follows. He says, Ein hakoin sarach lakadesh bein kol avoda va'avoda. First of all, again, the Rambam Paskins, a kohen need not sanctify his hands and feet in between one avoda and the next. So rather, what does he do? Ela pam achos mekadesh baboker va'oved va'holech kol hayom kula v'chol halayla. And the halacha is he sanctifies his hands and feet one time in the morning, and that sanctification takes him through that day and that night. V'hu shelo yotza min hamikdash. Rabbi say this is provided that what? That over the course of that day and night, the kohen did not go ahead and leave the Beis Hamikdash. V'lo yashan, he didn't fall asleep. V'lo yatil mayim, and he didn't relieve himself. We're going to discuss relieving himself, Rabbi say, in just a little bit. V'lo yasich daito, and ultimately, again, he does not remove his intention at all. So we'll say, bottom line, how does the Rambam paskin? So the Rambam ultimately paskins like Rabbi, that halacha lemaisa, the maximum amount of time that any kiddush adayim v'raglayim works for is how long? 1 day and 1 night. But comes the next morning, even if you haven't left the Beis Hamikdash, you must be sanctified. I both say, just so you should know, this is an important halacha for us. Why? Because this very much is mirrored in our contemporary halachos of Netilas Yadayim. I will say this shaila comes up for us in just a little while. Shavuos night, is there a din of Netilas Yadayim? Do you have to wash Negel Vaser Shavuos morning if you were up the entire night learning? So it's actually machlokes. It's machlokes. So we'll say, so what do? We actually go ahead and wash again the next morning. We go ahead and we wash again the next morning. There's a whole shaila with the bracha about do you make a bracha or not. But me'ikar adin, there is an obligation of new netila every single morning. What is that modeled after? This halacha. The same way that the kohen has to do a brand new kiddush. I was supposed to say again, so just so you understand how this plays out. The kohen is running a kohanic marathon, and mamish again, he has been doing the avodah the whole morning plus the whole night, and he's still going. He's kohanic energizer bunny. He's still going the next morning. Also, he has to stop, re-sanctify hands and feet, and then continues on. So the Rambam ultimately paskins like Rabbi. Good, weiter. So we'll say another number of interesting cases. Yitzia ma'ushatoil b'kiddush na'im raglayim. So we'll say, watch this. What happens if the kohen leaves the Beis Hamikdash? Rashi says, Yitzia chutz la'azara ma'ushatoil k'derech sheposa b'chal ha'kedashim shekadshem k'lisharis shemiyotziv flam yosef. Listen to this. I know that if I take a carbon outside of the Beis Hamikdash, the carbon is pasul. What happens if the kohen leaves the confines of the Beis Hamikdash? Does that, by definition, bring to an end his act of Kiddush Na'im Raglayim and require him to do another Kiddush Na'im Raglayim when he comes back in? Imtim Salomar, Lina Lo Pasla, De Lo Parish. So we'll say, ultimately, again, do we say if the Kohen's staying there overnight, so that does not invalidate his Kiddush Na'im Raglayim? Why? De Lo Parish. So we'll say, Lo Parish means he has not separated himself from the Avodah. On the other hand, Avayitzia de Parish, Asuchi Masach Daite. But I will say, when he leaves the Beis HaMikdash, or he's actively separating himself from the Mikdash, that act of separation perhaps does bring to an end his Kiddush Adayim Raglayim. O Dilma, Kevin de Biyadolach Zar Lo Masach. Or I will say, do we say that what? Since he has the ability to return to the Beis HaMikdash whenever he wants, therefore what? We will not treat that like a Hesech Hadas. So I will say, here the Shaila. So the Shaila is, if the Kohen leaves the Beis HaMikdash, does that, but when he returns, does he require a new Kiddush Adayim Raglayim or not? What are the two sides of the coin? On one hand, he's left. Maybe that, by definition, that act of leaving brings to a close his act of sanctification. Therefore, he has to re-sanctify when he comes back. Or do we say no? As long as he doesn't have a lapse of awareness. In other words, as long as his intention ultimately, again, is to come back, and he controls when he comes back, perhaps that Kiddush Adayim Raglayim should remain in effect. So Tashma, Kiddush Yadav Raglov V'nitmu. So we'll say if he sanctified his hands and his feet, and ultimately again then he became Tameh. Now we'll say, now Rashi points out we're talking about a form of rabbinic Tumah. Look at Rashi, V'nitmu Hayadayim V'davar She'in Tum Asal Min HaTorah Sheyitma Gufo Ela B'pigol Obenosar Sheshaninu Shematam Hayadayim. So let's say Kohen does his Kiddush Adayim Raglayim. Then what happens? V'nitmu, he becomes Tameh. But the Tumah we're referring to over here is a rabbinic Tumah. For example, handling of pigul. So we'll say rabbinic Tumah, only manifests in the hands. Only the hands are tamei. The rest of the body is tar. So we'll say, what's the halacha? Matbilin. So he immerses his hands in the mikvah. Vein tzarach lekadesh. Ultimately, again, he does not need to do another kiddush adayim vraglayim. Yatsu. But if the kohen leaves the Beis Hamikdash, then what? So hare elu bikdushasan. Ultimately, again, it will still remain in a state of kedusha. Yatsu yadav lo kami boilan. So we'll say, here's the issue. If he extends his hands outside of the Beis Hamikdash, that's not our kasha. Ki kami boilan yatsa kol gufo mai. What we're asking, I will say, is not if the kohen extends his hands outside of the Beis Hamikdash, but what? His whole body leaves. What happens if his whole body leaves? Mai, what's the halacha? So Tashma, Shalo Rachos Yadayim Raglayim. So we'll say Shalo Rachos Yadayim Raglayim. So Mekadesh Bikli Shares Bifnim. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Shalo. Let me read that again. Shalo Rachos Yadayim Raglayim. So we'll say Mekadesh Bikli Shares Bifnim. Mekadesh Bikli Shares Bechutz. O Bechol Kli Bifnim. So we'll say O Shetava B'mei Ma'ara Va'avar Avadasa Psula. So we'll say in any of these cases, where ultimately again he was mekadesh with the kli sharis bifnim, or he went ahead and he was kiddush b'kli sharis b'chutz, or b'kli chol bifnim, or he went ahead and he immersed himself in mei ma'ara. So we'll say in all of these cases, and he did the avoda. What's the halacha? Psula. Why? Taima the kiddush b'kli sharis b'chutz. So they will say the reason for this psul is because he sanctified himself with the kli sharis outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Ha kiddush bifnim. But if he went ahead and sanctified himself with a kli in the inside of the Beis Hamikdash, the yatsa, and then he left, avodasa kshera, the avodah would still be good. I will say, what do you see from here? You see from here that as long as there was a kiddush adayim vraglayim bifnim with a kli sharis, even if he went out, assuming there was no hesach hadas, ultimately again the kiddush adayim vraglayim still stands. So the Gemara says, Dilma. Kiddush b'kli sharis b'chutz. Maybe the case over here ultimately is where he went ahead and he sanctified himself with the kli sharis, but it was b'chutz. So hey chidami, what's the case? Kigon the apik yadav lebar v'kiddush. We'll say maybe it's a case of ultimately what? Where he went ahead and he extended his hands outward, meaning outside of the Beis Hamikdash, and was mekadesh it. Ha kiddush b'fnim v'yatza. But I will say if that's the case, the inference from that would be that if he sanctified on the inside, meaning he sanctified on the inside, the yatsa, and then he left, the apik yadei lebar, where ultimately now his hands extended outward, kshera, it would be good, and then only by his hands. Aval yatsa kol gufo tibaylecha. But I will say in a case where ultimately again his entire body leaves the precincts of the Beis Hamikdash, we would still have the kasha. Amli Rav Zidler Rav Papa Tashma. Yotza chutz lemechitzas chomas hazara. If ultimately again the kohen leaves the mechitzos of the hazara, im lishhos ton tvila, we'll say if he's going to tarry there, then what? When he comes back in, he requires tvila. Now, if you look at Rashi for just a moment, draw say now this is a case of where he's leaving the mechitzas chomas hazara. So we'll say he is leaving the confines of the Beis Hamikdash, even leaving the courtyard. So the way the Bryce is phrased, we'll say is im lishhos. If he is there to tarry, then ta'un tevila. He's going to require tefillah. And Rashi points out over here, we are assuming over here that the reason he has to do another tefillah is why? Because of hesach hadas. Im lefi shah ta'un kiddush adayim v'raglayim. But I will say if he's just going for a little bit of time, then he requires just kiddush adayim v'raglayim. So what's the case here? I will say, Amar lei hachama askinon kigon sheyatza lahasech raglav ulahatil mayim. Oh, we'll say, what's the case over here? The case over here is where he's either going to defecate or to urinate. To which the Gemara says, 1 second. We'll say, we learned those halachos explicitly. What's the explicit halacha? Rabbi say, Kol ha-meisich raglav ta'un tvila, v'chol ha-meitel mayim ta'un kiddush adayim raglayim. We'll say, and this is indeed halacha l'maisa. If the Kohen Gadol leaves the Beis Hamikdash in order to go ahead and take care of his needs, so when he comes back, he has to re-sanctify. The nature of that re-sanctification depends on what he did. Kol ha-meisach raglav, so we'll say, if halacha l'maisa, he defecated, when he comes back to the Beis Hamikdash to work, ta'un tevila. He requires immersion in a mikvah. On the other hand, v'chol ha-matil mayim, if he just urinates, then Taun Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. Then halacha l'maisa, he requires a re-sanctification of his hands and feet. And I both say that is indeed, we actually saw that. The Rambam made mention of that in passing. The Rambam made mention of that in passing over here. Same halacha. Perakei halacha gimel. V'hu shlo yatsa min hamikdash v'lo shlo yashan v'lo yatil mayim v'lo yosech daito. Ultimately, again, halacha. So Rashi says over here. The Rambam says v'chol hamesich es raglav ton tevila. If he goes ahead and defecates, he requires immersion in the mikvah. And if he goes ahead and urinates, he just requires a re-sanctification, ultimately again, of his hands and his feet. To which the Gemara says, you're right. Tani v'hader mefarish. First we state that halacha, and then we explain it. Good. So Tashma, so we begin to see over here that this. So first of all, look, let's go with what we know. We know number one, Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim maximum only lasts until the following day. So we'll say once the night passes and you want to restart a new day of avoda, you require a new re-sanctification. Person goes out, Kohen goes out to urinate, requires a new sanctification. Kohen goes out to defecate, requires tevila in a mikvah. Now the Rambam points out over here, Yotzo chutz lechomas ha'azara. If he left the walls of the Beis Hamikdash, im lishos bochutz yotza kishechozr ton tevila, ve'im lachzer miyad yotza kishechozr ton kiddushayin v'raglayim bilvad. So it's actually very interesting. If you leave the precincts of the Beis, you leave the walls of the Beis Hamikdash. So we'll say if he's out of the Beis Hamikdash for some significant amount of time, then when he comes back, he requires tevila. If it's just an in and out, he requires another kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. Watch this. Tashma para. We'll say, what about for the para aduma? Rabbi Chia bar Yosef Amar, Mekadesh bekli sharis bifnim, v'yotzei. So Rabbi Chia bar Yosef Rabbi says that what? So for the para aduma, Rabbi if he's going to do the para aduma, first he requires kiddush yadayim v'raglayim, right? And then ultimately he's yotzei. Now Rabbi remember again, the avoda of the para aduma is not done out in the Beis Hamikdash. Rashi says para, ba'avodas para aduma, she chutz liyushalayim bahar hamishcha. Also remember again, the surface of the paraduma is done on Har HaZeisim, also known as Har HaMishcha, then Har HaZeisim. But nevertheless, even though that avodah is done outside of the Beis Hamikdash, the first order of business is the Kohen requires Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim inside the Beis Hamikdash and then goes out. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Chia bar Yosef, Ar Mekadesh v'Kli Sharis Bifnim v'Yotzei, Rabbi Yochanan Amra afilu b'chutz v'afilu b'Kli Chol. So also Rabbi Yochanan says, no, you could do that. You could wash your hands and your feet even outside of the Beis Hamikdash and even not with a Kli Sharis. Va'afilu b'mekidah shel cheres, even with an earthenware drinking cup. Amar Papa, shiny para. So we'll say, but para is maybe not the good example over here. Why? Hoil v'chol ma'aseh b'chutz l'pasla b'yitzia. We'll say paradum is different. Why? Because since the entire avoda is done on the outside of the Beis Hamikdash, so again, in that case, lo pasla b'yitzia. Even if the Kohen did kiddush raglayim inside the Beis Hamikdash, and then went out to do the para aduma, when he comes back, he need not do another kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. Why? Because the entire avodah of the para is outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Ihachi lama li de mekadesh. Ultimately, again, we'll say if that's the case, that the whole avodah of the para is done outside of the Beis Hamikdash, then why does he require kiddush yadayim v'raglayim to begin with? Ke'ein avodah pnim. We'll say ultimately again because we want the avodah of the para aduma to resemble avodah done inside of the Beis Hamikdash. Even though me'ikar adin, the avodah of the paraduma should not require kiddush yadayim v'raglayim, nevertheless, we will do kiddush yadayim v'raglayim in order that it resembles avodah done inside of the Beis Hamikdash. Iboilu, tuma ma'u shetol the kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. Also, listen to this. What happens if the Kohen becomes tamei? If he becomes tamei, what's the impact of that tuma upon his kiddush yadayim v'raglayim? So the Gemara says, Imtim silamar yitzia lo pasla. So if you want to say that if the Kohen leaves the Beis Hamikdash, that doesn't invalidate the kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. Why not the gavra chazi? Because even though the Kohen left the Beis Hamikdash, nevertheless he is still fit for service. Aval hacha the gavra lo chazi asuchi masech daite. But both in the case where he becomes tamei, where the Kohen himself is not fit for service, maybe that is called the hesech hadas, and therefore again, after he purifies himself, he requires a brand new kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. O dilma, kevan dahader chazi v'lo masech daite. Or do we say what? since the Kohen knows that he is once again going to become fit for service, he doesn't have Hesach Hadas, and after he undergoes the purification process, which we're assuming right now is just rabbinic tumah, just immersing his hands in the mikvah, ultimately, again, there's no Hesach Hadas, and therefore once he becomes tahor, he does not have to redo his Kiddush Layim Raglayim. So Tashma, we learned, Kiddush Yada Varagla V'nitba V'nitmu Matbilin Vein Tzarech L'Kadesh. So therefore the Brisa says that what? Kiddush Yada Varagla V'nitmu, if he sanctified his hands and feet, and then he became tamei. So we're talking about over here where his hands became tamei through some type of rabbinic tumah. Matbilin, so we have him immerse his hands in a mikvah. Vein Tzarech L'Kadesh, and he need not re-sanctify them after he becomes tahor. Nitmu Yadav Lo Mibaylan. We'll say we're not asking if his hands became tamei. Kimi Baylan. We'll say what is our shaila? Nitma Kol Gufo. Ultimately, we're talking about a case where his entire body becomes tamei. So the Gemara says Kol Gufo Teipokli Kevan Debayla Me'avet Herav Shemesh Asuchi Ma'isich Daite. But say if his whole body is becoming tamei, then generally again what? Once his body becomes tamei, that's going to require Herav Shemesh, which means he can't do the avodah the entire day. If he can't do the avodah the entire day, Asuchi Masach Daite. The assumption is he has a lapse in awareness. What's the case? What's the case we're dealing with over here is where what? He becomes tamei right before Shkia. Because he becomes tamei right before sunset, there's no significant amount of time between the time that he becomes tamei and the time when he once again will become fit to do the avodah. That's our shaila. So we'll stop over here with, I'm leaving you mid-shaila. So the fundamental shaila we're dealing with, Rabbi is as follows. If the Kohen becomes tamei in a way that he can't do the avodah now, but he's going to become fit for tumah in a relatively short amount of time, so when he becomes fit once again, does he require another kiddush adayim v'raglayim or not? And the fundamental shaila Rabbi is, in the previous cases, the individual was fit for service. There was just some other factor. In this case over here, the individual is not fit for service. So do we say because he's not presently fit for service, therefore what? There's a Hesach Hadas, and because there's a Hesach Hadas, he has to re-sanctify his hands and feet when he once again becomes fit for service? Or do we say no, since it is his intention ultimately again to do the avodah, therefore what? Halacha l'maaseh, there is no Hesach Hadas, and when he becomes tahor, he does not need to re-sanctify his yadayim v'raglayim. That we will Amirat Hashem.